Hello again, and welcome back. I am McSnazzi, and today we are back in City Skylines for another video of our Grand Haven series. We are getting a lot done in this episode, a little bit more with downtown, some exciting stuff, so if you guys do enjoy this video, please consider subscribing down below. It's completely free, and it really does help out the channel. Now, before we get into this, if you don't like watching all the time-lapse, there are timestamps in the description down below that'll put you right at the end of the time-lapse so you can watch our live commentary of the finished product. If that's more your speed, you can check that out now. But for all you time-lapse lovers, let's get right into the video. So for this episode, I wanted to continue doing more of the downtown development of our big city here. It's just going to be like that way for maybe another episode or two, kind of getting on a roll with doing this downtown development, and I don't want it to be too big and too sprawly. It's not going to be mega dense like in LA or a New York City, but it's going to be, you know, pretty comparable to bigger cities like Detroit or maybe Minneapolis. And I've been taking a lot of inspiration from Portland, Oregon, and Seattle in Washington as well. Looking on Google Earth and Google Maps, never been to those two cities, but I feel like this Grand Haven series sort of sits in that Pacific Northwest sort of region and has sort of that feel. So I'm taking a lot of inspiration from those places, and I think I'm really getting a lot of that into the build, and I think it's looking very nice, and I hope you guys like what I do in this episode. We really get a lot of the density down, give a little more identity to this city here, and I think it looks really great when we get to it at the end. But a lot of this episode is pretty exciting, lots of placing buildings and everything, not a lot of boring road layout and stuff, even though I know all you City Skylines fans do love road layout. We do a little bit of that, but we do a lot of cool things to sort of spice up the downtown and place a lot of dense buildings, sort of building that skyline, and it's really fun. So what I'm really trying to do for this dense downtown area is, you've seen me put up a bunch of seawalls here, or quays, whatever you want to call them, or keys. I think they're called keys, not quays, even though they're spelled quays, I think they're called keys. But this is a lot of things that I saw on like Google Maps, Google Earth, of big cities that are sort of on coasts or just have like a river flowing through them. They put keys along the edges. It just makes sense for flooding purposes and development purposes. So we added those in. I think they look really nice. And some of these other things that we're doing that you saw, we're placing buildings. I'm building little roads around the big roads. I don't want it to be a huge grid here in this downtown area. Try to switch it up between smaller density roads, even though they're the higher density versions of these smaller roads, not tons of these huge avenues. We're still gonna put some 4-lane smaller roads into there here and there. Just makes it feel a little more organic and a little more realistic, instead of just a big block of a bunch of big cities. And placing all these buildings individually really helps out with that as well, because you don't get any of that weird zoning stuff that City Skylines can do sometime, where they put a weird building in a spot that it shouldn't be, like a super high-tech building out in the middle of nowhere. So I have a lot of control over that, and it feels really nice to do that. I've never been a huge fan of placing everything in City Skylines before. I've been a big fan of zoning stuff, but after doing it in this series, I gotta say, I think it is the way to go. You have just so much more control over your city and how things develop, and things won't change when you leave and come back. You know, the zoning stuff tends to grow and change over time, which is cool in a simulation sort of aspect. But if you want sort of a realistic looking city and you want it to stay that way for a while, I recommend using ploppable growables. So what we're going to do here is we're going to put in a tram line. I may change this to a metro line, an above ground metro. I'm not sure yet, but I do want to have a lot of mass transit in this downtown area to the surrounding areas and other parts of the city as well. I think it's going to put sprawl out a little bit elsewhere, so that's sort of my idea here. We put metro lines here and there, like underground metro lines, but I'd like to do like an above ground train. I guess the tram is the best way to do it, but I think there's like above ground metro trains now that I might try to do in place of those tram lines right there. So here we're going to place some smaller density buildings. I don't want everything to be a huge skyscraper. I want variations here. This is an asset I got on the workshop. That small building is supposed to be like a government building, like a bureaucratic building for the government. I think it looks nice. Here I'm going to try to do a little bit of this hospital placement, but we're not actually going to put the hospitals down in this episode. We are going to put them down in a future episode. I have an idea of what I want to do at the hospital now, a little based off of Portland, Oregon, what I talked about before, how I'm sort of taking inspiration from there. They have this really cool thing, and you know what, I'll talk about it more in the live portion. It'll make more sense there. But for now, we are placing down two assets here. This is the fire station and the police headquarters for the big city and pretty much for the region. This is the headquarters for fire station and police. These are two assets off the workshop. They're the Detroit fire station headquarters and the Detroit police station headquarters. Works great. I am a Michigan native, so I've seen these buildings in real life. They're spectacular, and it just fits really well with a downtown sort of feel. So that's why I chose those assets. Plus, they're probably the most realistic and best looking like police and fire headquarters that actually like look realistic and not super futuristic and huge on the workshop. So it worked out great. And I think they look really nice and they're placed well. And we'll do a little bit of detailing on here, but we needed to put some of those utilities and down for the city because down here we haven't had any of that. And that's pretty much a big thing that we need to do. I still need to pop fire stations and police stations everywhere around the city because everyone's complaining. I did do a little bit of that off camera in this episode, is just place some utilities and amenities for the Sims throughout the city because I just want the build to work well and look nice. I don't want it to just be a shell of a city. I want the simulation to work. I want to be able to watch it run. It's been doing great right now, and I'm really happy with that because that is a goal of mine. I just kind of like watching the city too. So that's why you'll see me not use a ton of assets. It's not going to look like super realistic, super cool, and real life, blah, blah, blah. It can still look realistic, but in a video game sort of simulation way. And I just like watching it run too, but we do have quite a few of assets, and we're going to add more and more. The more I play, the more assets I add. I feel I need more and more, so it's kind of a problem, but not so much. It'll be okay in the end. I just don't want to make it too hard that the viewers like you guys cannot download the map and download all the mods and assets and still have it run on like any computer. That's sort of the goal. It's not going to run on like necessarily any computer, but at least, you know, the majority of people's systems. You don't have to have a very expensive system to run this, and I don't want it to be super framey when you're running it either. So that's sort of a goal of mine, just a little side thing. But here we're going to do a little highway work. We're going to use the keys that we used on the coast there. I think they work really well when you do them in highways as well, to sort of, in these dense areas, they have like highway walls and stuff like that. It's just a common thing because a lot of the highways are sunken down or rose up above the city streets, so I think it makes sense. Now, right here on screen, you're watching me build the park. So instead of putting a bunch of really dense buildings down on the coast here, something in Portland is they have this sort of river walk along the river in their like most densest part of their city in the downtown area. I thought it was very cool, and I think it's something that I want in this city too, so I went for it. Besides the sort of strip here, there wasn't a lot of space to put any really cool, really dense sort of buildings, and it wouldn't make sense to have them right up against the water. So we're going to go for a park, and in Detroit it's like this too. There's a park down by the Detroit River as well. So I think it's something a lot of big cities do. But you know, you see places like New York and Seattle as well, where it's just like ports and big buildings right up against the coast. So, you know, it's a little bit of both. Other parts of the city, in Grand Haven, I think we're going to put buildings right up against the coast. But right here in the downtown area, a little nicer, we're going to add a park, just a little sort of bay walk, and I really like how it looks. I think it adds, you know, a lot to the realism. Looks nice. But we may adjust it a little bit as time goes on. You know, maybe add a little bit of that LA or San Francisco vibe, whatever it is. I'm not entirely sure where they have the Ferris wheel or the little boardwalk area. we could do something like that too. I also want to do a zoo in this city as well. You know, I do a lot of Planet Zoo content on the channel, so it's just fitting to put a zoo in the city skylines and kind of overdo it a little. So maybe along there, because I think that's actually a real thing in Chicago with the is it Lincoln Park Zoo? It might be the Lincoln Park Zoo, but something like that. I've done some research for a Planet Zoo video, but they have their zoo like kind of in a park on the coast of Lake Michigan. So that could be something we could do here. That could be cool on one of the sides. But I think I have an idea of what I want to do on either side of the downtown for the coast. One side's going to be a little more industrial, going to have sort of that port sort of vibe. Because it is a coastal city. I want to do a port. I think it's super cool. The other side, I think we'll do a little more hotel leisure and a campus for a college. So something like that. But things always tend to change in this series or just in any series in general. When you get to it, things don't always work out like you think. So we'll see. Just keep your mind open. Just watch the city get built before you. Just enjoy the ride because I'm enjoying it myself. Just having a lot of fun building in here. This is the most work I've put into a city skyline series, going and meticulously placing every individual building, really thinking a lot about road layout, mass transit layout, trying to keep the traffic down, keeping the facilities or the utilities sort of able to run together, stuff like this. So lots of cool ideas that I got. Usually I'm into the zoning and all that, but doing a little bit of a different vibe in this series, and I think it's turning out super nice. I couldn't ask for anything better. But we're going to do a little bit of a side road here. I thought mix it up, do a little bit of a curve in this area. And we're going to put a little parking lot here. I know, right? Downtown, a parking lot, not a parking garage. A lot of parking lots in Detroit. Probably because of the decline of the city in the past sort of decade or so. It's a lot better than it was nowadays, but still lots of parking lots, lots of buildings have been torn down there. But I think even in sort of prosperous cities and things like that, it is pretty common to have parking lots as well. So I think it works, and for some reason I'm getting really excited over a parking lot in the big downtown area. But hey, I think it adds a little bit to the levels of the city, you know. Down on the street level, everything seems so big and everything, big skyscrapers. So it's nice to have these little sort of areas of interest, maybe that's what you want to call them. I don't know. But we do a little bit of a mini park as well in this episode that I'm really excited to show off shortly. But here we're going to place some more buildings, of course. I wanted to add some nicer buildings in, like some nicer, newer developed, like high-tech, not necessarily high-tech, more eco-friendly, more modern-looking buildings mixed in with some of the more traditional, classic sort of, you know, city skyscrapers that you'd see. Not necessarily skyscrapers, but just tall buildings in general. I think there's only a few skyscrapers in this city, if we really want to call them skyscrapers, but a lot of these older residential buildings that look kind of gross, you know, they're very realistic. One of those on the screen just a second ago, but also some of these newer buildings to make it look like there's some new development and things of that sort. But here we're going to build that little park I was just talking about, just a little tiny park in the middle of the big city. Probably a little nicer of an area next to a nice apartment building, nice office building, sort of a new development. They can afford to have sort of this green space, and I feel like it's mandated by a lot of cities, you know, to have green space here and there. Have parks here and there, not just super urban sprawl, but, you know, then there's those other cities that have a ton of urban sprawl, you know. It's really a toss-up, whatever you want to do. I thought this felt nice here, kind of cut away from all the big skyscrapers in the area, so I think it worked well. Happy with the result, but there's a lot of things to do, lots of space to fill up. In the next episode, I think we're building a Capitol sort of building. I'm going to call it the City Hall. I think I'm going to actually call it like the state capitol. I've already worked on it a little bit, but you know, stuff like that just adds a little bit more immersion for maybe the state of Grand Haven or whatever. I don't know. We'll call it something, but we still have yet to name this big city. I have an idea. I'm not gonna necessarily reveal it this episode because I haven't really incorporated it into the city, but I'm still mulling it over. May change, but you don't even know what it is, so it doesn't matter. So here we're going to finish up sort of these two blocks for the remainder of the episode, sort of finish out the very dense areas of this downtown. From here, we're going to start sort of calming down the big tall buildings and sort of a little less dense, maybe have a little more green space, stuff like that, some smaller density buildings. But at the same time, I think we're still also going to have some larger buildings pop up here and there. Definitely not as tall as the ones we have, but I think it's a little realistic to have it that way looking in my research when I go on Google Earth and stuff. And I know I talk about that a lot, but it's a great tool if you're ever trying to build something realistic. And I think that's a big focal point of my channel that I put in my Planet Zoo videos and my City Skylines videos. I kind of want realism, and that's sort of my thing. So if you're more that style too, you're not looking to make something that's super duper cool necessarily and super duper futuristic, and it's like, how'd you come up with that? It's so over the top and awesome. I like that stuff too, but I prefer to make the realism. I think it just looks so much cooler than just the super over the top. Sure, you can do that, but would that ever exist in real life? Probably not. But you know, it's a game, so people have fun doing that, and I like doing that sometimes too. But I really like the realism. I think it's a challenge, and it's a fun challenge to sort of make a fictional made-up area look really realistic, that it's somewhere that you could be like, hey, you know, where is this? Is this based off a real place? You know, something like that. A little nerdy, a little not necessarily everyone thinks like that, but at least for my builds, I kind of had that feeling. I go for the realism, but I'm gonna stop talking. I'll see you guys all in the real-time walkthrough in just a second. We're just gonna finish up the remainder of this block, and then I will see you guys for the real-time walkthrough of the final product of the build. So I'll see you guys in a second. Alright everybody, welcome back to the real-time portion of the episode, and just look at that city. It looks fantastic. I am so happy with the result of this episode, really extending that sort of downtown area, adding some new assets, and wow, it just looks so good. I'm very happy with the result here. We have this little park that we added up front here along the Baywalk, all these keys that we added. These sort of seawalls as well, and then just a bunch of buildings. Pretty much in the last episode all we had was this block right here, these couple buildings, and then this right here. So everything else, these couple blocks as well, like a bunch of new buildings that we put in here, here as well. Just everything, all of this, it just looks great. Some road layouts, and just looking at it above, it looks like a realistic city that you'd see on Google Maps or something like that. So super happy with the result. I also added, if you did notice during the episode, that I added some bus lines along here. And sorry, it's a little loud when we get down there, but bus lanes along this main avenue here. For the big city, so I'm gonna end up putting buses in one of these episodes. Not sure which one yet, but those will come into use. This tram line may turn into an above ground metro line, or it'll stay a tram line, not sure yet, but I kind of like the idea of keeping it raised, kind of like the People Mover in Detroit. Portland and Seattle looks like they had a system like this as well when I was looking at their cities too. The library here, we're going to keep this. I know I said in the last episode we'll probably move it, but I think it looks nice. It's the vanilla asset, a little over the top, but you know, it's fun to have some of those sometimes, and I think it fits a little because it kind of downgrades from all the tall skyscrapers, and we put some nice trees around it as well. But love these blocks. Here's that parking lot I was all obsessed about, completely full in this downtown area. We might add some assets here, little hot dog stands, maybe like a fence. I could maybe put some small buildings in right here. Not sure. That's something for another time. Doesn't really matter at this very second. But last block you saw me do as well in the time lapse. The police department is here. The fire department is here. And really, we just have a big, awesome area. We have this sort of futuristic new development where they have basketball and tennis on the top of it. I think that looks super cool. Over here you see the campus. That's going to move over here, I think, after sort of doing it. I was going to do a little bit of the campus in this episode, but then I got building, didn't really fit, so we're not going to do that. We're going to put it over here with maybe some hotels and stuff like that, a little bit of leisure. But as I was saying, the hospital I'm not going to place here. The hospital is going to go right here. Now, I know what you're thinking, it's a little weird. It's not too far from the downtown. I want to have a big hospital complex. I see a lot of these big buildings that are, these big cities that are big hubs for more of these rural areas or more like nature areas. Maybe less populated is the word to use. You know, lots of mountains and stuff. You can't really build a ton of stuff everywhere, but these big hubs like Portland, Seattle doesn't have a ton around it. It's just kind of this big city surrounded by mountains and water and everything. So in Portland they have this cool like sort of hospital area complex with just a ton of hospital buildings just on like a hill above the downtown, and I thought, you know what, I really want to do that. So we're going to create our own little version of that right by this mountain sort of overlooking the downtown here, and I think it'll work great. I'm excited to get to it. We're sort of going to raise the ground here and put it along this river. Not sure how I'm going to do the highways, but that'll help with traffic flow as well, so you know, hospital traffic won't interfere with the dense downtown area, which I think is a smart way to do things if you're looking in hindsight from a city planning sort of perspective. But if you haven't seen it, you can check it out on Google Maps. Portland's got that cool like hospital area, and it's very cool. It's built in the hills, a lot of windy roads, and it just looks so in tune with nature, which is kind of a goal of this build as well for this series. Is we want to have a big city that's super cool, but we also want to sort of intertwine it with the nature around it. So with that being said, not a ton else to show here. I hope you guys did like the video. I had a lot of fun making it, just making more of this downtown. I think it looks great. I mean, even from this angle, really good, very realistic. I could see this being an actual real place, but in the next episode we're going to do some more things. Right here we're going to put in a sort of state capitol building that's going to cut down from all this dense sort of building area, because there's going to be a nice big park in front of it and things like that. But without further ado, I hope you guys did enjoy the video. If you did, please consider subscribing down below. Leave a like if you did enjoy it. Leave a comment if you have anything to say about the series, any suggestions, things like that. I hope to see you guys in the next episode, and until then, I am McSnazzi, and I'll see you guys in the next one.